everybody. My name is Geraldine Bastion. Thank you for the introduction, Max. I am honored to be moderating this panel now on the potential positive impact through circular fashion systems, which is going to build a little bit on the conversation with Kate Fletcher to see how far are we implementing circular systems, where perhaps adoption barriers, and where also perhaps critiques of the systems being adapted. As you can see, I also had time to change quickly. I'm joined by 4 fabulous experts on this topic who I'd like to introduce to you now. First of all, I would like to welcome Lavinia Moot from Armed Angels. Lavinia is an advocate for social and environmental justice. She has over 10 years of experience working in a world where she's driving ethical and sustainable fashion and business models. She joined Armed Angels as a corporate responsibility manager in late 2017. And prior to that, Lavinia was researcher in the field of child labor, global trade. She was auditing and consulting numerous organizations, including different manufacturers and brands in China, Bangladesh, and Europe, as well as India, Turkey, and South America, on the implementation of different codes of conduct and standards in the textile industry. So she really has a wealth of experience that she's bringing to this panel. And it's great to have you here today, Lavinia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Geraldine.
I would also like to warmly welcome Daniel Magunye, who is passionate about serving communities and creating positive impact that sustains people, the planet, and creative businesses. He's currently pursuing his passion as the head of community relations at the Circular Fashion Summit and with the circular fashion retail platform LabLocal. So his work really involves igniting and creating programs that bring awareness, empowerment, and action towards the digitized circular fashion industry. Thanks so much for being with us today, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Geraldine.
I'd also like to give a warm welcome to Professor Dr. Melanie Jäger-Erben, who is a professor for transdisciplinary sustainability and research at the Technical University Berlin. She's a sociologist and psychologist and researches social change at the interface of technical development and environmental change, with a focus on conditions for sustainable forms of consumption and production. In the circular economy debate, which we're zooming in on today, she advocates for greater consideration of the social aspects, so social participation and social innovation. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, Melanie.
Hello, nice to be here.
Last but not least, a warm welcome to Matthias Fuchs from OceanSafe, who has vast experience in developing and marketing mass market home textiles for international retailers. As the CMO of Swiss OceanSafe, Matthias is the driving force behind their concept for a fast track to circular textiles. And he believes that only with industrial scale solutions can we really provide the full and meaningful impact that the industry so urgently needs. And he's going to tell us today how they are pursuing this with the products at OceanSafe. Thanks so much for joining us today, Matthias.
Great to be here. Look forward to discussing things with you guys.
Great. So before we kick off, just a quick word to our audience. This panel is live and you have the possibility to ask questions or bring in comments. So if you see me doing the side eye, then it's just to have a look in our chat and to see if you've left any questions or comments for the panelists in our chat. So let's start things off with you, Lavinia. I learned that Armed Angels is one of the few producers, one of the few brands that actually has a circularly produced t-shirt on the market. And I would love for you to walk us through what it took to do that.
Ooh, what it took to do that. Well, basically our journey towards circularity started approximately 3 years ago because, we've been on the market since 2007 and we've always done everything, I would say, with regard to highest ecological and social justice. But we also reached the point where we realized that sustainability is not enough anymore. I think, Matthias, we hear your paper scratching. Sorry.
Anyways, take notes. Sorry, Lavinia, back to you.
No. Good that I
was
realized.
Taking notes.
Yeah. Very good. Listen to me. Precisely. Okay. Anyways, yeah, we realized that sustainability is not enough anymore, and that it's not enough, to claim as a fashion brand to be sustainable and eco and fair if we only uptake organic cotton, and produce everything like in a greener way, because we all know that like our planetary boundaries, we have already reached our planetary boundaries, full stop, and we need to think about more intelligent and regenerative systems, and in a linear production system, this is basically not possible. And upscaling this idea, we even believe at Armed Angels that it's also not enough to only or eventually uptake recycled fibers and implement circular business models and production models. We even believe that it's necessary to implement certain repair mechanisms if we want to have a future. And that's also where like the whole discussion of decolonizing fashion comes in, because we also need to, like, this is always my thought of like even upscaling circularity to implement repair mechanisms. Anyways, we did a lot of research. We were really challenged to implement a reverse supply chain, but our first take was zero production, because we are only talking about textile overproduction and the waste we are generating at the end of the production line, But during production already, a lot of pollution is generated and a lot of waste is generated. So our idea was, first of all, to uptake our cutting waste, which is the last stage of production, and recycle this cutting waste and integrate it into one of our products. And at the same time, because that's what I'm always telling my colleagues and trying to explain out there, that there's never going to be a circular product. A product is always and only going to be a recycled product. What is circular is the system, because circularity is a school of thought, it's a concept, it's a system, is a model behind it. So our circular tea, which is basically not correctly called circular tea, is only circular because we implemented a take-back system. And in the near future, there will also be a resale system and eventually a leasing system. There will be more repair operations and services. And I think I'm going to stop here. I mean, I could keep on talking, but I think this is enough regarding the circular tea.
Super interesting. Thank you. So many things to pick up on already. Maybe just one quick follow-up question. Were there any lessons learned that you drew out of the experience of implementing the circular system around this one product? And are you seeing also a shift with the adaptation and also consciousness for these systems with both your customers, but also along your value chain?
Well, first of all, the so-called reverse supply chains are not existent. Everybody's talking about it, but they are basically not existent, and especially not in the form of a profitable reverse supply chain. So the take-back system we have implemented, which in my opinion is like super revolutionary for a small brand, that we are taking responsibility and offering our clients to send back their garments. So we check if we can resell it, donate it, or recycle it. It's not profitable. It's an investment coming from my budget. And it has to do a lot with logistics, and we are also generating carbon emissions, which is a negative impact of the reverse supply chain we are having implemented right now, but we hope to find a solution for this in the future. And apart from that, it's really like the communication towards the end consumer, I do believe, is super challenging because everybody understands what recycling is. But like this concept of circularity and the extended responsibility of a product, it's not yet there. But at the same time, obviously, also like laws and regulations are not there. There's no support from the government. The governments are screaming for the implementation of a circular economy, but the framework is just not there.
Thank you. I think that gives us a really rich base for the discussion to depart from. And I'd love to bring you in, Daniel, on what Lavinia just said, because of this ecosystem overview that you have, and also being a connector between different parts of the ecosystem with the summit that you host. I would love to hear your view on what Lavinia just said. Like, what are the frameworks that are missing from your perspective? Would you agree, or do you see any other sort of factors at play that are sort of pushing the dynamic currently, or also keeping it back?
All right. Thank you so much, Geraldine. So basically, with what I do at what we do actually at LabLocal, so we're actually a circular retail platform that connects, that helps brands and retailers connect their products at any level of the supply chain. So like you're talking about from like the manufacturing stage right until like the consumer, like the first consumer of a garment, right until like the garment can no longer be worn. So that's what we are doing, like just connecting our products like at any level of the value chain. And it goes back to the take back programs, because now brands can be able to like have these initiatives where they can then say to their consumer, you know what, bring that item back to the store and perhaps we'll give you a discount. Because right now, as an industry, we are facing a big problem where 73% of garments end up in landfills. So imagine if with the power of innovation as well as technology, like all of this, like we can actually like try to like unlock these opportunities that end up in the landfills. Because imagine that all end up like dumped and unwanted. So we believe like innovation, design, tech, they all have a factor towards like actually achieving sustainable goals together. So yeah, with the summit itself, like this is basically also what we're doing by just igniting like collective action, because circularity, like the mission to circularity is not just like one person's job, but all of us as an industry, like we all depend on other. And it's a way for us to, just encourage each other, and like we are because you are. So like whatever like brands are going to be doing, that then affects the whole ecosystem. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think that would be my opinion.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I'd like to pass it on to Melanie. And of course, the session title is The Impact of Circular Systems. So I would like to also pass the question to you. Where do you see the impact that circular systems are already having in the fashion industry, or also the barriers to impact currently?
Yeah, I'm not so much an expert for the fashion industry, but more for the society as a sociologist. And yeah, the picture at the moment is still a bit depressing, but hopeful, maybe you can say. So what we are looking at, for example, here in this summit or in this talk, are like fascinating examples of very best practice cases, which are still a niche in a niche at the moment, if you look at the whole society. So the problem is that if you look at it from a consumer side, for example, they see a big inconsistency between, on the one hand, sustainability discourses, which try to foster thinking more in the limits of growth, thinking more in planetary boundaries, thinking more about sufficiency and so on. But at the same time, they experience the total opposite in their everyday life. So they go into a fashion shop and they see that 3/4 of the collection is changing every month. They go to Amazon and have a choice between 230 million products and so on and so on. So they see a big vision of affluence and in a world that is supposed to be scarce, that is supposed to be limited. And I think we have to work on this contradiction, particularly too in the fashion industry. I'm looking a lot also on electronics, and the fashion and electronics are going to go together in the future. There's a lot of talk about electronic textiles and so on. So this is also an interesting development that goes in a totally contradictory direction, because that makes clothes even more sustainable in the future. And I think we have to look at how many products do we have in the system already, and it doesn't suffice. And I think the other dialogue partners here already pointed to that. It doesn't suffice if you only bring in new products. If you bring on something that is more sustainable than the products existent, you have to change the system, and you have to really look for innovations in the terms of sufficiency, for example. So how can we foster less consumption? How can we foster consumers or better users of products that are capable to keep their garments as long as possible, to make their own, to repair them, to upcycle them, and so on, and to create product service systems that are more collaborative, circular value creation networks instead of value chains. And I think this is still a blind spot in the mainstream discussion. I think there are already a lot of good examples for sufficiency also in the fashion market. But I think this is something that should be looked on more in the future.
Thank you. I would love to explore the idea also a little bit further as to how far, both in the terms of the digital and in terms of circular, we're inviting new ideas about consumption that are not necessarily connected to sufficiency and limitation, and whether that holds a certain danger, but also a certain potential in it. Maybe, I know this is a complex question, Melanie, but maybe that's something you can just elaborate on very quickly. Do you see that through circular systems, also through digital systems, we are inviting the idea that an affluent consumption is possible, just under a different framework? And do you see that as a positive thing because it might get more people into the game, or also as a danger because it takes us away from the sort of core sustainability discussion?
I think an important thing is to understand that sufficiency doesn't mean limits, or it means enough. And I mean, your capability to consume has also a limit. So you should really consider what is your own limit. And a lot of people feel overwhelmed with the affluence that is on the market. And I think this, to switch from the idea of material affluence, have more and more of something material, to an affluence of creativity, or an affluence of new ideas, or an affluence of, I don't know, if you think about modular clothes, for example, you can combine them in 1,000 different ways, then you have an affluence of different ways of combining things. So I think it's important to see that people like to have a lot, but maybe they should have a lot with less material and a lot more creativity, a lot more things to experiment with and to try out, instead of just consuming what is already pre-designed of other people.
Thank you. I think that's a very well formulated sentiment, that it's very much a matter of perspective, how you define affluence and what the values also are that you want to promote in a society, or basing that off from. I want to pick up on the innovation idea. And of course, I want to bring you into the discussion, Matthias. Sorry for keeping you waiting so long, especially in terms of the concept that we make new innovation, especially in materials. This is already picking up a question, by the way, that came into the chat in terms of innovation in textile processes and yarn creation, and how far you are seeing that as a key driver in the idea of circularity.
I think, reflecting on what has been already said, is I personally believe that we're not going to change consumption and the habits of consumption of the broad public, especially in textiles. That's not going to happen on a short scale. So we have to think about how consumption in the shape that we do now can be shifted to a new system and can be done well, instead of just trying to improve it just a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, materials play a hugely critical role, what these textiles that we're talking about are made out of. And at the end of the day, we follow the cradle to cradle principle, from the beginning. And at the end of the day, it's a design philosophy. So when the product is designed well, and when the designer at the beginning of the design process already has the sort of end of life, or what happens after when the item is broken and cannot be repaired anymore, has thought into it. And then if you have a system in place that actually can keep these materials in play, then you have a new system, and then it is good product design. And I think there is quite a bit of innovation right now happening in the fashion industry with in terms of materials. That's good, but it's by far not fast enough for the challenge that's ahead of us. That's my opinion.
So can you talk us through how you're doing things at Ocean Safe, and where also the innovation in your products lie?
Yeah, well, we came to the idea of circularity. We came in contact with the idea of circularity like seven years ago, and we did a long story of research on how textiles are made and how circularity can be implemented in value chains and materials and products. And so what we basically do is we help brands and retailers reach circular products in a very fast way. So we help them to change their value chains. We change them to change their product designs, and we are a tech company, basically a textile tech company, and we have developed our own synthetic textile fibers, which are biodegradable, for instance, and we have synthetic yarns and blends with other fibers. And what we do is all is circular, all is cradle to cradle gold certified, and everything is biodegradable. So that's basically what drives us, and we help retailers and brands basically follow that path.
That sounds like a very important endeavor that you're following. Have you seen, like the same question I asked? Sorry, please.
No, because basically our conversations is, I mean, what we know in the market is taking place. The boardrooms, the CEOs, everybody wants circularity. I mean, it's in the market. The consumers sort of want it, but at the end of the day, it ends up at the designers' tables, and it ends up in buyers' tables and product designers' departments. And for them, they don't own their value chain. So changing a whole system is hugely complex and impossible for a single brand to do. Like Armed Angels, it's a huge endeavor to really change these mechanisms.
But it's possible if you want it.
Right.
It's a question of commitment. I'm really sorry to say that, but it's a question of commitment from the top management.
Right.
So is that
plenty of resources, you know? Yeah.
I know.
Let me jump in on that. And bring you back in, Lavinia. Is that where you see in a lot of the, say, industrial producers along the value chain, the main bottleneck, that it's still an economic decision being made by top level management that don't see the sort of prosperity in this prospect, let's say, or where should be the advocacy heading? Where's the main target group here?
No, of course. It has always been about the price, and it is still about the price. And everybody who defines a sustainability strategy, if it doesn't go in line with the financial strategy, like the sustainability strategies in this world are made in line with the financial strategies, and nobody is actually really questioning their business model. And if you want to implement circular production systems, but also like a circular school of thought, you actually have to question your business model. You have to be open and tolerant to eventually create the value somewhere else, and also create different margins. And that's something I am not seeing at all. And on the other hand, I would love to add something to the cradle-to-cradle system, because the cradle-to-cradle system is so awesome, not only because you have like circularity and biodegradability. It's so hard for me to pronounce this in English. In mind when you're designing the product, it really is a different school of thought, because it's this panel is about the positive impact of the circular fashion system, and the cradle-to-cradle system has material health in mind, and the positive material health in mind. Having said this, actually the cradle-to-cradle system is already thinking in the repair mechanisms, because when you analyze chemistry and chemical inputs in the cradle-to-cradle system, you are analyzing and checking how far chemical input may have a positive impact on wastewater streams, and so on and so forth. And I love this school of thought. I know that the certification is far too expensive, but like the school of thought, if we would implement it on the financial side of our business, this would really help.
I want to get back to the far too expensive point in a second, because that was something that leads on to a question that was raised in the chat. Let's hold that for a moment. Those are the barriers, yeah? That's the glass ceiling that we're hitting at the moment. Let's talk about some of the enablers for a second. You touched on the fact that you were a fashion tech company or material tech company, Matthias. So I'd like to ask this question to both you and Daniel, how you think that digital technologies are enabling circular systems, and with emerging technologies, both in terms of data management, but also in terms of production, we're having another sort of game changer come to play. Would you say that is the case, or where are you seeing the impact of digital technologies in circular systems today? Daniel, do you want to begin?
You want to go ahead? Yeah.
All right, thank you. I believe digital technologies like really have a play in actually achieving the goals towards circularity. Because if you to look at like how retail has been functioning or centuries even, people would go to maybe a departmental store, maybe like Harrods, for example, and then you purchase an item and then you just leave the store, and there's pretty much no record in terms of the owner of the new owner of the garment, and pretty much buy and bye-bye kind of thing. And now with new technological innovations, you're getting to see a lot of traceability platforms, even LabLocal, for example, whereby we are actually now helping brands and retailers to be able to connect their items, and we do this actually through QR codes. So the QR code, for example, you can the consumer of a garment can be able to see in terms of who the manufacturer of a garment and the retail where it came from, as well as you now, and then you as the new owner of a garment can also be able to interact with the garment as the new owner. And if I decide that I want to pass it on to someone else, the next person can do the same thing until actually the end of life of the garment. And the most interesting part, going back to your question, is that now with other players, for example recyclers, for example, they can then be able to initiate programs where they can then maybe ask for these garments back maybe at the retail store to maybe try to maybe use them for resale purposes. So I feel digital innovation, I feel that's one of the catalysts to circularity. So I think from me, pretty much that would be my opinion. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing those examples. That makes it super tangible. Matthias, do you have any thoughts to add on how you're seeing the correlation between these topics?
Totally agree to Damien. Totally a catalyst for the industry, and absolutely also for connecting the different players in circularity. It's a complex system, so that's where, of course, technology and digitalization can come in. Just two examples from what we do at OceanSafe with digitalization. Also, Damien, we use QR codes on all of our certified OceanSafe certified products. So each garment has a QR code on the care label, so that the end consumer can exactly track and read the online the instructions, how the product is taken back and what happens basically after end of life. And the second point is our fibers are proprietary, and they have markers inside, and also this technology is basically can be traced back, and because we believe transparency and traceability and transparency are huge factors for the future, also for the consumers, which are relevant. Where was my garment made? Who made it? Who is involved in it? And we want to make that transparent because we have nothing to hide. So that also goes along with digitalization. And of course, also blockchain helps there, because you can really see if things are real or if they are not. And that was not possible 5 or 10 years ago, obviously.
Yeah, so transparency, knowledge sharing and management, and then, of course, this general idea of dematerialization and how that is changing the way that we design, just as a short summary of everything that you've contributed. Time is going by quickly, and we have so many interesting topics to still cover with you. So I would like to zoom back in on a little bit of the topics that you're researching on Melanie. I know we also talked a little bit earlier together the correlation between digital and circularity, more in the aspects of being overwhelmed by all the consumption possibilities of life. But maybe coming back a little bit into the other aspects. I got to interview Kate Fletcher earlier, as I mentioned in the beginning, and some of our conversations were also about the shortcomings of the circularity debate, and where she sees some concerns in regard to a strong focus on economic topics, leaving out a little bit the cultural and social dimensions, which are, of course, inherent to sustainability concepts. How are you looking at this in terms of the research that you do, and what would you say in regard to the importance of social innovation as being part of circular systems?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on Kate's side here, you can say. So what I'm not doing, I'm not only looking into the future and how things can change to have more sustainable systems of consumption and production, but how different elements of change or factors of change or conditions of change has influenced our evolution so far. And what you can see when you study the long history of the relation between society and technology is that technology has always been praised as the solution to all problems. It's also called the techno-fix myth, that you can fix complex problems with technology. And I mean, we have complex technology already, so it's not an easy fix, but it's still a techno-fix. And the thing is that I don't have anything against digitalization to use it for more sustainable consumption. I think that's a very good idea, and there are very, very many potentials there. But the problem is that particularly the political and innovation stakeholders and those who are kind of fostering change, they concentrate too much on this. And they concentrate too much on this more or less easy solution because it's only one sector of society that is concerned. And I think the problem is, I mean, circular economy teaches us that we need to think in systems. I mean, it comes from epistemologically, it comes from a systems theory, and it means that we need more loops in our systems, we need more feedbacks, we need more couplings, we need more, of course, transparency, and digitalization can do a lot here. But at the same time, we don't only need smart systems, but also smart people. And the problem is that people get not smarter, particularly consumers don't get smarter. So they don't know. And a lot of people don't know how to sue a very easy, how's it called, failure in their garments. I don't know the English word here. They don't know how they can wash their clothes properly. That's also an interesting thing, that a lot of people wash their clothes in a wrong way, so they're not durable anymore, and so on. So we have really a problem of illiteracy concerning sustainability, but also concerning durability, and we have a big illiteracy concerning data and the comprehension of data and the management of data in your head, kind of. So this is something that is forgotten at the same time, and we can't. It doesn't suffice to look on digitalization. It is a mean to reach a goal. It's not the goal. So I think this is important, and I also say that I also would contradict my previous speaker in saying that we have to change the consumer, or the consumers are changing, and they are changing more faster than the top management. We try to compare the uptake of innovation in different sectors of society, and we found that top managements of big industries, they are really hard to change. They are really locked inside their own mental infrastructures, and they're really past dependent in their thinking. And consumers, they are much more flexible. I mean, how fast have people adopted to smartphones and digital media? How fast have we adopted to the pandemic, and all the different differences and difficulties that we've faced in our everyday life? So people can change a lot. They only need to be invited, sometimes more harder than softer, but they need to be invited to change, and then it will happen. I mean, more or less.
Ooh, there was a lot in there. And I think I'm going to jump right to the question that I was going to say sort of for the end of the panel, just because you touched on it now, and then maybe circle back to include some of the points that came up in the chat earlier. I would just take a moment to say to all our speakers in this panel, I would highly encourage you to visit the chat in our platform, because there were some individual questions for you. So for instance, is Ocean Safe biodegradable, or where can we follow some of your research, Melanie? So maybe you can go back into the chat to answer some of those questions as well. That would be great. I was thinking in preparation for our panel, because I personally feel that we emphasize so much the responsibility of the end consumer in some of these discussions. And obviously that is a very important one. I totally understand and believe in the bargaining power of the individual, and that consumption is political. So at the same time, though, I feel that, and this is like, I took a bit of inspiration from a series I started watching, which my sister recommended to me, which kind of debates the question, what does it take to be a good human in this complex world that we're living in today? And I feel like it is not easy to be a good human. It's not always easy to make the right consumption decisions. You don't always know how to wash your clothes. You might not know, unless you read all the fine print, and who has time for that in their life, about the origin of every product. It's hard sometimes to be a good human in the circular and sustainable way, but it's easy to be a good company, because you know the rights and wrongs. And it's sort of on a, if you're looking at the numbers, it's, and like easy, by good, I mean, you can choose your profit margin, or you can choose to be a sustainable business. And I wanted to put this idea out for you, which is why I would kind of agree with what Lavinia was saying. That is the key target group that we need to reach, because that is where the key responsibility lies in the end, and also where it should be easier to act than on the mass individual level. So I'm going to pass this on to the open floor to ask, would you agree with this or not? Lavinia, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, so I just have to sum it up. So you basically meant that the responsibility lies with the brands, right? And the industry. That's what you said, right?
At least I feel we should be focusing on that, not only because it's the more obvious target, but also because it's easier to change on that level.
Yes. No, I totally 100%, 180%, how much percent, I don't know, there is. I totally agree. I think we all have to agree on the fact that consumerism has never been and will never be the solution. Full stop. And all the sustainability claims which are going out there, by this, by that, because you're doing good for the planet, are bullshit. You're not saving the world or the climate or fighting climate change by buying an organic cotton t-shirt, not from Armed Angels, not from anybody else, You're eventually saving the planet or doing something good if you invest in biodiversity or carbon capture or whatever. So I would really, really, really like to take the end consumer out of this discussion. Obviously, they are part of the whole conversation. And the interesting fact about circularity is that sooner or later, they are kind of becoming part of the supply chain, because they are becoming secondary raw material suppliers. But for now, we should take them out of the conversation, because it's the industry, it's the market, it's politics, and the political framework is not given. We do not have a common solution or a common definition of waste, and we do not have the framework for reverse supply chain. So the responsibility lies with the industry, full stop. Because, we have this data, at least we have on hand. We know where global carbon emissions come from. We know that they do not come from the African country, and we also know that they do not come from the end consumer. They come from a couple of hands of big corporations in this world. Full stop.
Thank you. That was a really strong statement. Are there any other panelists that want to agree or disagree with this notion?
Yeah, amen to that. I mean, it's policy, and it's the brands and retailers who have the power to make a change in the very short time that we have left. I mean, we don't have another 30, 40 years until slowly consumers adapt to a certain thing. I really, really believe that that's not going to happen. Consumers are what they are. And we kind of have to deal with the situation here. Yes, some parts of consumers are changing. Some parts are willing to pay a little bit higher price. But at the end of the day, that's a benevolent action, which is not changing the industry as a whole. And we need a drastic, radical change. Absolutely. And there's only these two players in that game who can make really a choice here. And yeah. Full stop. That's I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Melanie, maybe just going back to the fact that you said you did research, and this is the hardest group of people to crack. Where do you think the pressure points can lie? Is it to get better data on the also prospects for this? Is it that we need the political framework to come in place first that was going to cause pressure on the industrial side? Or where do you see possible pressure points?
The pressure comes from the policymakers, and the policymakers are responding to the public. So I think we shouldn't talk about consumers, maybe we should talk about citizens. And we need citizen power. We need citizens who are encouraged and also asking for policymakers to take over more responsibility. But in the end, they also have to accept what is changing, because it means for a lot of countries, or not some countries in the world, and some lifestyles in the world, it means that there will be less. I mean, but it's still enough. The thing is that we have to organize enoughness, and I mean the pressure must come from the public, and I think I believe in bottom-up approaches. So we need to have more invitations for participation. We have to make more. Circular economy is also much based on performance economy, which means that we need more labor. We need more people working, and not only working to earn a living, but working to sustain themselves, to provide things for themselves, and to participate in production processes and so on. So I think this is an important thing. And I mean, I still believe in the consumer, but more in the consumer as a citizen. So.
Thank you. And I think, the power structures you explained, of course, that makes a lot of sense. And we should not give ourselves less agency that we have in that. Lavinia, you raised your hand. Do you want to jump in on that?
No. I was just, as Melanie said, we need more public engagement. I was like, yes.
We have power to the people.
Yeah, we have to raise our voices and put pressure on politicians. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, in that case, I want to squeeze in one other question, which goes back to something that you talked about earlier, which is the notion of decolonizing fashion. I know we're not have time to elaborate this concept, but somebody asked a question in the chat earlier saying that some of these systems are very expensive and costly to implement. And how do we make sure we don't create more disparities? We're looking at this on a global level. So as we were talking earlier, for instance, about also how it's costly it is to be cradle-to-cradle certified. How do we make sure that organizations can profit from these developments on a global scale, and we're not leaving out, the community or the players also in the global South who might have a harder time catching on, especially when there are very pricey systems in play that you need to link to in order to be part of the game? Is that something that you've also that you feel you can answer, Lavinia?
Me? Yeah, of course. I would love to jump on that question. I do understand the question marks. I do not have a fixed solution, but I think we also cannot really discuss it because we have not tried it actually. It's just like what we think it's going to be. But on the other hand, I can tell you that I do believe it also has to do with the framework, which is not existent. For example, in the case of Armed Angels right now, we are having the problem of implementing reverse supply chains. But this has to do that certain producing countries, that we are not allowed to import post-consumer textiles, and that's why a whole industry right now is not able to flourish, because the political framework is not given, for example. And then I think the polluter pays principle can help implement these systems, as always. This is always a quick fix and a long fix. Polluter pays principle, it's super easy. And also the implementation of certain repair mechanisms. And I think then we can reach a certain leverage. There must be solutions for this.
Thank you. And those are really practical. Yeah, connecting points. Sorry, just very quickly, Daniel, I would love to hear your take on this also being based outside of Europe and perhaps having just a different global perspective also on this question, due to the fact that you're based in Shanghai, if I can reveal that.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. I really agree with Lavinia. So for me, just to give a bit of history before I actually moved to Shanghai. So actually, I am from Zimbabwe in Africa, and I just moved to Shanghai 7 years ago. So like looking at like third world countries, actually the term of sustainability, it's something that's not new to us. It's something that's always been a part of our culture. So like growing up, I would see like cobblers on different streets, and they were their own small businesses. And people like, I feel like, to be very honest, I feel like the issue of like a lot of like consumership, like the issue of like the issue that we face right now with like a lot of like consumer waste, most is coming from like first world countries. Because like in Africa, like growing up, no matter how rich you are, you never throw away clothing. So you'd go to like a cobbler to fix your shoes. You'd go to a seamstress to alter your pants. So I feel like these business models like have always been there. And I think actually like pretty much as the world is like looking to the first world countries to see like the solutions towards sustainability, I feel like actually third world countries might actually have a solution. Yeah.
That is a wonderful sentiment that I would like to end this discussion on, and do a big thank you to all four of you. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Lavinia. Thank you, Matthias. And thank you so much, Melanie, for being part of this discussion. I can tell you that you got a lot of shout outs and love from the audience in the chat.